Harry Potter, Chapter 10, Halloween. Wait a minute, I should better change this. Okay. Malfoy couldn't believe his eyes when he saw that Harry and Ron were still at Hogwarts next day, looking tired but perfectly cheerful. Indeed, by next morning, Harry and Ron thought that meeting the three-headed dog had been an excellent adventure, and they were quite keen to have another one. Um, in the meantime, Harry were quite keen. In the meantime, Harry filled Ron in about the package that seemed to have been moved from Gridger to Hogwarts, and they spent a lot of time wondering what could possibly need such heavy protection. It's either really valuable or really dangerous, said Ron. Or both, said Harry. But as all they knew for sure, the mysterious object was that it was about 2 inches long. They didn't have much chance of guessing what it was without further clues. Neither Neville or Hermione showed the slightest interest in what lay underneath the dock and the trapdoor. All Neville cared about was never going near the dock again. Hermione was now refusing to speak to Harry and Ron, but she was such a bossy know-it-all. And what they saw this is an added bonus. All they really wanted now was a way of getting back at Malfoy, and to their great delight, just as such a thing arrived, with the post about a week later. As the owl fled into the great hall as usual, everyone's attention was caught at once by a long, thin package carried by 6 large screech owl. Harry Parcel was amazed when the owl soared down and dropped it right in front of him. Harry was just Harry was just as interested as everyone else to see what was in the large parcel, and was amazed when the owl soared down and dropped right in front of him, knocking his bacon to the floor. They had hardly fluttered out of the way when another owl dropped a letter on top of the parcel. Harry ripped open the letter first, which was lucky, because it said, "Do not open the parcel at the table. It's certain your new Nimbus 2000, but I don't want everybody else knowing. You've got a broomstick, or they'll all want one. Oliver Wood will meet you tonight on the Quidditch pitch at 7 o'clock for your first training session. Professor McGonagall." Professor M. McGonagall. M. McGonagall actually mean Mirinda, or I'm not quite sure, but it's something to do with Mirinda or anything with M and I. Harry had difficulty hiding his glee as he handed the note to Ron to read. "A Nimbus 2000? Ron moaned endlessly. "I've never even touched one." They left the hall quickly, wanting to unwrap the broomstick in private before their first lesson, but halfway across the entrance, but halfway across the entrance hall, they found their way upstairs barred by Grape and Gourley. Malfoy seized the package from Harry and left it, and felt it. "That's a broomstick," he said, throwing it back to Harry with a mixture of jealousy and spite on his face. "You'll be for this time, Porter. First year aren't allowed them." Ron couldn't resist it. "It's not any old broomstick," he said. "It's a Nimbus 2000. What did you say you've got at home, Malfoy? A Comet 260? Ron grinned at Harry. "Comets look flashy, but they're not in the same ledger as Nimbus." "What would you know about it, Weasley? You could afford half the handle," Malfoy snapped back. "I suppose you and your brother have to save twig by twig." Before Ron could answer, Professor Flitwick appeared at Malfoy's elbow. "Not arguing, I hope, boys," he squeaked. "Porter's been sent a broomstick, Professor," said Malfoy quickly. Yes, that's right," said Professor Flitwick, beaming at Harry. "Professor McGonagall told me all about the special circumstances, Porter. And what model is it?" "A Nimbus 2000, sir." said Harry, fighting not to laugh at the look of horror on Malfoy's faces. "And it's really thanks to Malfoy here that I've got it," he said. Harry and Ron headed upstairs, smothering their laugh with Malfoy's obvious rage and confusion. "Well, it's true," Harry trolled as they reached the top of the marble stair. "If he hadn't stolen Neville, remember, I wouldn't be in the team. So I suppose you think it's a reward for breaking the rules," came an angry voice from just behind them. Hermione was stomping up the stair, looking disapprovingly at the package in Harry's hand. "I thought you weren't speaking to us," said Harry. "Yes, don't stop now," said Ron. "It's doing us so much good." Hermione marched away with her nose in the air. Harry had a lot of trouble keeping his mind onto his lesson that day. It kept wandering up to the dormitory where his new broomstick was lying under his bed, or straying off the Quidditch pitch where he would be learning to play that night. He bolted his dinner that evening without noticing that he was eating, and then rushed upstairs with Ron and Ralph the Nimbus 2000. At last, "Wow!" Ron sighed as the broomstick rolled onto Harry's bedspread. Even Harry, who knew nothing about different brooms, thought it looked wonderful, sleek and shiny, with a mahogany handle and a long coat of tail of neat straight twigs, and Nimbus 2000 written in gold near the top. As 7 o'clock grew nearer, Harry left the castle and set off toward for the Quidditch stadium. Pitch in the dusk. Pitch, actually, not stadium. You've never been inside a stadium before. Hundreds of seats were raised and stand around the pitch so that the spectacle were high enough to see what was going on. At either end of the pitch were 3 golden poles with hoops on the end. They reminded Harry of the little plastic stick Muggle children blew bubble through, except that they were 50 feet high. 50 feet. Too eager to fly again to wait for Wood, Harry mounted his broomstick and kicked off the ground. What a feeling! He swooped in and out of the goalpost, and then sped up down to the pitch. The Nimbus 2000 turned wherever he wanted at his lightest touch. "Hey, Porter, come down!" Oliver Wood had arrived. He was carrying a large wooden crate under his arm. Harry landed next to him. "Very nice," said Wood, his eyes glinting. "I see what McGonagall meant. You really are natural. I'm just going to teach you the rules this evening. Then you'll be joining team practice 3 times a week." Here he opened the crate. Inside were 4 different size balls. "Right," said Wood. "Now, Quidditch is easy enough to understand, even if it's not too easy to play. There are 7 players on each side. 3 of them are called chaser. 3 chaser," Harry repeated, as Wood take out a bright red ball about the size of a football. "This ball called the quaffle," said Wood. "The chaser threw the quaffle to each other and try and get it through one of the hoops to score a goal. 10 points every time the quaffle goes through one of the hoops. Follow me." The chaser threw the quaffle and put it through the hoops to score, Harry was excited. "So that's sort of like basketball on broomstick with the 6 hoops in it." "What's basketball?" said Wood curiously. "Never mind," said Harry quickly. "Now there's another player on each side who's called the keeper. I'm the keeper for Gryffindor. I have to fly around our hoops and stop the other team from scoring. 3 chaser, 1 keeper," said Harry, who was determined to remember it all. "And they played with quaffle. Okay, got that. So what are they for?" He pointed at the 3 balls left inside the box. "I'll show you now," said Wood. "Take this." He handed Harry a small club, a bit like a rounder bat. "I'm going to show you what the bludger do," Wood said. These 2 are bludger." He showed Harry 2 identical balls, jet black and slightly smaller than the red quaffle. Harry noticed that they seemed to strain to escape the strap holding them inside the boxes. "Stand back," Wood warned Harry. He bent down and Fred plunged the bulger. At once, the black ball rose high in the air and then pelted straight at Harry's faces. Harry swung it at it with a bat to stop it breaking from his nose and sent it zigzagging away in the air on zoom around their head and then shot at Wood, who dived on top of it and managed to pin it on the ground. See? Wood panted, forcing the struggling bulger back into the crate and strapping it down safely. The bulger rocketed around, trying to knock player off their broom. That's why you have to beat on each team. The Weasley twins are ours. It's their job to protect their side from the bulger and try and knock them toward the other team. So, think you've got all that. 3 chasers try and score with the quaffle. The keeper guard the goalpost. The beater keep the bulger away from their team. Harry reeled off. Very good, said Wood. Have the bulger ever killed anyone? Harry asked, hoping he sounded offhanded. Never at Hogwarts. We've had a couple of broken jaws, but nothing worse than that. Now, the last member of the team is a seeker. That's you, and you don't have to worry about the quaffle or the bulger, unless they're cracking my head open. Don't worry, the Weasley are more than a match for the bulger. I mean, they're like a pair of human bulgers themselves. Would reach into a crate and take out forth a last ball compared to the quaffle and bulger. It was tiny, about the size of a large walnut. It was bright gold and had little fluttering silver wings. This, said Wood, is the golden snitch, and it's the most important ball of the lot. It's a very hard catch because it's so fast and difficult to see. It's the seeker's job to catch it. You've got to weave in and out of the chaser, beaters, bulger, and quaffle to get it before the other team's seeker, because whichever seeker catch the snitch win his team an extra 150 points. So they nearly always win. That's why seeker got fooled so much. A game of Quidditch only ends when the snitch is caught, so it can go for age. I think the record is 3 months, so they had to keep bringing on subsidies so the player could get some sleep. Well, that's it. Any question? Harry shook his head. He understood what he had to do all right. It was doing that. It was going to be the problem. We won't practice with the snitch yet, said Wood carefully, shutting it back inside the crate. It's too dark. We might lose it. Let's try you out with a few of these. He pulled a bag of ordinary golf ball out of his pocket, and a few minutes later, he and Harry were up in the air, with throwing the golf ball as hard as he could in every direction for Harry to catch. Harry didn't miss a single one, and Wood was delighted. After half an hour, night was really falling, and they couldn't carry on. That Quidditch Cup will have our name on it this year, said Wood happily as they trudged back to the castle. I wouldn't be surprised if you turned out better than Charlie Weasley, and he could have played for England if he hadn't gone off chasing dragons. Perhaps it was because he was now so busy. What with Quidditch practice 3 evenings a week on top of all his homework. But Harry could hardly believe it when he realized that he had already been at Hogwarts 2 months. The castle felt more like home than Private Drive had ever done. His lessons too were becoming more and more interesting now that they had mastered the basic. On Halloween morning, they woke to the delicious smell of baking pumpkin wafting through the corridors. Even Professor Flitwick announced in charm that he thought they were ready to start making objects fly, something that they had all been dying to try since they'd seen him make Neville toad zoom around the classroom. Professor Flitwick put the class into pairs for practice. Harry partnered with Seamus Finnegan, which was a relief because Neville had been trying to catch his eyes. Ron, however, was to be working with Hermione Granger. It was so hard to tell which other Ron or Hermione was angry about this. She hadn't spoken to either of them since the day Harry Broomstick had arrived. Now, don't forget that nice wrist movement that we've been practicing, squeaked Professor Flitwick, perched on top of his pile of book as usual. Swish and flick, remember, swish and flick. And saying the magic word properly is very important too. Never forget Wizard Borrowfo, and said instead of F and found himself on the floor with a buffalo on his chest. It was very difficult. Harry and Sirius swish and flick, but the feather were supposed to be sending skyward just lay on the desktop. Sirius got so impatient that he prodded it with his wand and set fire to it. Harry had to put it out with his hat. Ron at the next table wasn't having much more luck. "Wingardium Leviosa," he said, waving his long arm like a windmill. "You're saying it wrong," Harry heard Hermione snap. "It's Wingardium Leviosa. Make the gar nice and long." "You do it then, if you're so clever," Ron snarled. Hermione rolled the sleeve of her gown, flickered wand, and said, "Wingardium Leviosa." Their feather rose off their desk, hovered about 4 feet above the head. "Oh, well done!" cried Professor Flitwick, clapping. "Everyone, see here, Miss Granger done it." Ron was in a very bad temper by the end of the classes. "It's no wonder no one can stand her," he said to Harry as they pushed their way into the crowded corridor. "She's a nightmare, honestly." Someone knocked into Harry as they hurried past him. It was Hermione. Harry caught a glimpse of her face and was startled to see that she was in tears. "I think she heard you." "So?" said Ron, but he looked a bit uncomfortable. She must have noticed that she got no friend. Hermione didn't turn up for the next class and wasn't seen all afternoon. On their way down to the Great Hall for the Halloween feast, Harry and Ron overheard Parvati Paddle telling her friend Lavender that Hermione was crying in the girls' toilet and wanted to be left alone. Ron still more awkward at this, but a moment later they entered the Great Hall, where the Halloween decoration put Hermione out of their mind. 1,000 of live bats fluttered from the wall and ceiling, while 1,000 more swooped over the table in a low black cloud, making the candle and pumpkin stutter. The feast appeared suddenly on the golden plate as it had the start of a turn banquet. Harry was just helping himself to a jacket potato when Professor Quirrell came sprinting into the hall, his turban askew and tear on his face. Everyone stared as he reached Professor Dumbledore's chair, slumped against the table, and gasped, "Troll in the dungeon! Thought you ought to know." He then sank to the floor and in a dead faint. There was an uproar. It took several purple firecrackers exploding from the end of Professor Dumbledore's wand to bring silence. "Perfect," he rumbled. "Lead your house back to the demonagerie immediately." Percy was in his element. "Follow me. Stick together first here. No need to fear the troll if you follow my order. Stay close behind me now. Make way. First you're coming through." "Excuse me, I'm a prefect." "How could troll get in?" Harry asked as they climbed the stair. "Don't ask me. They're supposed to be really stupid," said Harry. "Maybe Pete let it out for a Halloween joke." They passed different groups of people hurrying in different directions. As they jostled through their way through a crowd of confused Hufflepuff, Harry suddenly grabbed Ron's arms. "I've just thought, Hermione, what about her? She doesn't know about the troll." Ron bit his lip. "Oh, all right," he snapped, "but Percy would better not see us." Ducking down, they joined the Hufflepuff going the other way, slipped through a deserted side corridor, and hurried off toward the girl toilet. They had just turned the corner when they heard a quick footstep behind them. "Percy!" hissed Ron, pulling Harry in behind a large stone griffin. Peering around it, however, they saw not Percy, but Snape. He crossed the corridor and disappeared from view. "What's he doing?" Harry whispered. "Why isn't he down in the dungeon with the rest of the teacher?" "Search me!" Quietly as possible, they crept along the next corridor. After Snape's fading footstep. "He's heading for the third floor," Harry said, but Ron held up his hand. "Can you smell something?" Harry sniffed, and the soul stitched reached his nostril. A mixture of old sock and the kind of public toilet no one seemed to clean. And then they heard it, a low grunting and the shuffling footfall of gigantic feet. Ron pointed at the end of the passage to the left. Something huge was moving toward them. They shrank into the shadow and watched it as it emerged in a patch of moonlight. It was a horrible sight. 12 feet tall, its skin was still granite granite. It's gray. Its great lumpy body like a boulder with a small bald head perched on top like a coconut. And its short leg thick as tree trunk with that. 40 feet. The smell coming from it incredible. It was holding a huge wooden club, which dragged along the floor because its arms were so long. The troll stopped next to a doorway and peered inside. It it waggled its long ears, making it up into a tiny mind. Then slouched slowly into the room. The key's in the lock, Harry muttered. We could lock it in. Good idea, said Ron nervously. They edged toward the open door, mouth dry, praying the troll wasn't about to come out of it. With one great leap, Harry managed to grab the key, slam the door, and lock it. Yes! Flushed with a victory, they started to run back to the passage, but as they reached the corner and they heard something that made their hearts stop, a high, terrified scream, and it was coming from the chamber they're just locked in. Oh no, said Ron, pale as Bloody Baron. It's the girls' toilets! Harry gasped. Hermione, they said together. It was the last thing they wanted to do, but what choice did they have? Wheeling around the spirit back to the door and turned the key, flummoxing in the panic. Harry pulled the door open and they ran inside. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking the sink off the wall as it went. Confuse it! Harry said desperately to Ron, and seizing a tap, he threw it as hard as he could against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione and lumbered around, blinking stupidly to see what had happened. What had made the noise? Its mean little eyes saw Harry. It hesitated, then made for him instead, lifting its club as it went. Oi, pea-brain! Yelled Ron from the other side of the chamber, and he threw a metal pipe at it. The troll didn't even seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but it heard the yell and paused again, turning to its ugly snout toward Ron instead, giving Harry time to run around it. Come on, run! Harry yelled at Hermione, trying to pull her toward the door, but she wouldn't. She couldn't move. She was still flat against the wall, her mouth open with terror. The shouting and the echo seemed to be driving the troll berserk. It roared again and started toward Ron. It was nearest and had no way to escape. Harry then did something that was both very brave and very stupid. He took a great running jump and managed to fasten his arm around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but even a troll would have noticed if you stick a long bit of wood up into its nose. But Harry wanted still been in his hand when he jumped. It had gone straight up one of the troll's nostril. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed its club with Harry clinging on the dear life. Any second, the troll was going to rip him off or catch him a terrible blow with the club. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do. Here, the self-cry was the first spell that came into his head. Wingardium Leviosa! The club flew suddenly out of the nostril hand, rose high up into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped with a sickening crack on its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat to its faces. With a thud that made the whole room tremble, Harry got to his feet. He was shaking and out of breath. Ron was standing there with his wand still raised, staring at what he had done. It was Hermione who spoke first. Is it dead? I don't think so, said Harry. I think it's been knocked out. He bent down and pulled his wand out of the troll's nose. It was covered in what looked like lumpy gray glue. Troll buggies. He wiped it on the troll's trouser. A sudden slamming loud footstep made the three of them look up. They hadn't realized what a racket they had been making, but of course someone downstairs must have heard the crash, and the troll roared. A moment later, Professor McGonagall had come bursting into the room, closely followed by Snape, with Quirrell bringing up the rear. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on the toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll. Professor McGonagall was looking at Ron and Harry now. Harry had never seen her look so angry. Her lips were white. Hope of winning 50 points for Gryffindor faded quickly from Harry's mind. What on earth were you thinking of? Said Professor McGonagall with a cold fury in her voice. Harry, look at Ron. He's still standing with his wand in the air. You were lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory? Snape gave Harry a swift, piercing look. Harry looked at the floor. He wished Ron would have put his wand down. Then a small voice came out of the shadow. Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me, Miss Granger. Hermione had managed to get her feet at last. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own, because I've read all about them. Ron dropped his wand. Hermione Granger telling a downright lie to a teacher. If they hadn't found me, I'll be dead now. Harry struck his wand up its nose and Ron knocked it out with his own club. They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived. Harry and Ron tried to look as if though this story wasn't new to them. Well, in that case, said Professor McGonagall, staring at the three of them, Miss Granger, you foolish girl! How could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own? Hermione hung her head. Harry speechless. Hermione was the last person to do anything against the rule, and here she was, pretending she had to get them out of trouble. It was as if Snape had started hanging out sweet. Miss Granger, a 5-point will be taken from Gryffindor for this, said Professor McGonagall. I'm very disappointed in you. If you're not hurt at all, you'd better get off to Gryffindor Towers. Students are finishing the feast in their houses. Hermione left. Professor McGonagall turned to Harry and Ron. Well, I still say you were lucky, but not many first year could have taken on a full-grown mounted troll. You each win Gryffindor 5-point. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of this. You may go. They hurried off to the chamber and didn't speak at all until they had climbed 2 floors up. It was so relieved to be away from the smell of the troll, quite apart from anything else. We should have gotten more than 10 points, Ron grumbled. 5, you mean, once she'd taken off Hermione. Good of her to get us out of trouble like that, Ron admitted. Mind you, we did save her. She might not have needed saving if we hadn't locked the thing in with her, Harry reminded him. They had reached the portrait of the fat lady. Pigs now, they said, and entered. The common room was packed and noisy. Everyone was eating the food that had been sent up. Hermione, however, stood alone by the door waiting for them. There was a very embarrassed pause. Then none of them looked at each other. They all said thanks and hurried off to get plates. But from that moment, Hermione Granger became their friend. There's something you can't share about ending it up like liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them.